The chamber was larger than any structure ever built on Earth. It stretched for miles in every direction. A hollow sphere of gleaming metal and living crystal, it floated at the exact center of the galaxy. 12,000 seats rose in endless tiers, each one filled with a representative from a different world. Some were tall and thin like shadows given form. Others were masses of tentacles or clouds of glowing gas held together by invisible force. A few looked almost human, but their eyes held the cold light of stars millions of years older than the sun. At the bottom of this impossible space, standing on a platform no larger than a dining table, was a single human woman. Admiral Vera Holden stood perfectly still. She was 61 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen 3 wars and countless battles. Her black uniform bore the insignia of the United Earth Defense Command. Behind her, a holographic display showed footage of warships moving through space, thousands of them. Tens of thousands. The High Arbiter of the Galactic Council rose from his throne of living stone. His name was Thrax, and he was ancient beyond human understanding. His body was made of obsidian that flowed like water, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through every translator in the chamber. "Admiral Holden of Earth," Thrax said slowly, "you stand accused of the largest unauthorized military action in the history of this council. You moved 112,000 warships through territories belonging to 47 sovereign species. You deployed weapons that had been forbidden for 300,000 years. You attacked and destroyed a civilization that existed before your species learned to use fire." The chamber erupted in noise. Clicks and whistles and telepathic waves of anger crashed against Vera like physical blows. She did not move. She did not look away from the High Arbiter. "How do you answer these charges?" Thrax demanded. Vera's voice was calm and clear. "I did all of these things." The noise died instantly. 12,000 alien representatives stared at the small human woman who had just confessed to violations. That should have meant the destruction of her entire species. "I moved those ships," Vera continued. "I gave the order to use those weapons. I burned the Harvester civilization to ash. And if I had to make that choice again, I would not change a single thing." Thrax leaned forward, his obsidian form shifting with what might have been confusion. "You admit your guilt freely? You understand that the penalty for such actions could be the complete isolation of your species, the destruction of your colonies, even war against Earth itself?" "I understand perfectly." Vera turned to face the assembled representatives. Her eyes moved across faces and forms that humanity had only known existed for less than a century. "But before you pass judgment, I need you to understand why I did what I did. I need you to understand what happened 3 weeks ago." She touched. A control on her wrist, and the holographic display behind her changed. It showed a small farming colony on a green and peaceful world. Children playing in fields of alien wheat. Families sharing meals as the sun set over purple mountains. "This is New Harvest," Vera said. "A joint colony of humans and the Velith people. For 40 years, our species lived together in peace. We shared our food, our stories, our lives. Our children grew up together. The image changed, the same colony, but now it was burning. Ships hung in the sky like black insects, and dark figures moved through the smoke. 3 weeks ago, the harvesters came. They killed anyone who resisted. They took what they wanted." Vera's voice grew harder. What they wanted was children. The chamber was silent now. Even species that did not understand human emotion could feel the change in the air. They took 63 children from New Harvest, Velith and human. They loaded them onto transport ships and took them into a region of space that the Council has declared forbidden for 300 years. Vera looked directly at Thrax. Forbidden because nobody wanted to fight the harvesters. Nobody wanted to pay the cost of stopping them. The harvesters have existed for longer than most species in this chamber, Thrax said carefully. They take what they take. It is terrible, but it is the way of things. No fleet has ever successfully opposed them. That was true, Vera said, until 3 weeks ago. She changed the image again. It showed a young girl with red hair and freckles. She was smiling at the camera, holding a flower that glowed with soft blue light. This is Emma Brennan. She was 6 years old when the harvesters took her. Her father died trying to protect her. Her mother watched as they dragged Emma into the darkness. Vera paused. Do you know what Emma did when she woke up in that cage? Surrounded by monsters from her worst nightmares? Nobody spoke. She screamed. Vera touched her control again, and a sound filled the chamber. It was not loud. It was not impressive. It was simply the cry of a terrified child, wanting her mother, wanting to be safe, wanting someone to help her. But there was something else in that cry, something that made even the oldest beings in the chamber feel a chill they could not explain. Human children possess an ability that we did not know about until 3 weeks ago, Vera said. When they are truly terrified, when they believe they are going to die, they emit a signal that travels through hyperspace itself. A distress call that is written into our very biology. A cry for help that can cross the entire galaxy. She let the sound fade. That signal reached Earth. It reached every human colony, every station, every ship. And when we heard it, when we heard a child screaming for help across 10,000 light years of empty space, we did the only thing we could do. The display showed the fleet again. 112,000 warships, moving as one, burning toward the forbidden space where the harvesters had ruled unchallenged for millennia. We answered her. Vera faced the council once more. Her eyes were hard, but there was something else in them now. Something that the ancient beings of the galaxy had never seen before in any species they had encountered. It was certainty. Absolute and unbreakable certainty. You want to judge me for what I did? Then judge me. But first, let me tell you everything. Let me tell you about the cry that summoned the might of humanity across the stars. Let me tell you what we found in the darkness, and what we did to bring our children home. She stood alone on that tiny platform, surrounded by the rulers of 1,000 worlds, and she was not afraid. This is the story of how humanity went to war with the most powerful enemy the galaxy has ever known. Not for territory, not for resources, not for power. Her voice rang through the chamber like a bell. For one little girl who would not stop screaming. 3 weeks before Admiral Holden stood before the Galactic Council, Commander Marcus Webb was drinking cold coffee in the basement of a mountain. The United Earth Deep Space Monitoring Center was buried beneath 2 miles of Swiss rock. It was the most sensitive listening post ever built by human hands, designed to detect signals from the farthest reaches of explored space. Marcus had worked there for 15 years, and in all that time, the most exciting thing he had ever heard was a pulsar that sounded vaguely like a jazz drum solo. That changed at exactly 3:47 in the morning. Every alarm in the facility went off at once. Red lights flashed. Screens filled with data that made no sense. Marcus dropped his coffee and ran to the main console, where his team was already gathering with expressions of confused terror. "What is it?" he demanded. "Attack? Solar flare?" "What, sir?" Lieutenant Anna Park was pale, her fingers moving across her keyboard with desperate speed. "It is a hyperspace resonance signal. Biological origin. The pattern matches human DNA markers." Marcus felt his blood turn cold. Hyperspace resonance was supposed to be impossible for living things to produce. The energy requirements alone should have killed any organism instantly. "Origin point?" he asked. "Sector 447 Omega, 47,000 light years from Earth." Anna looked up at him, and there were tears in her eyes. "Sir, the signal analysis is clear. It is a child, a human child, and she is terrified. They played the signal through the speakers. It was not a sound that the human ear could normally hear. The computers had translated it, converted it into something that human senses could process. It was a scream. A little girl, screaming for help. Marcus had 2 daughters of his own. He had heard them cry when they scraped their knees or had bad dreams. This was different. This was a sound of pure, absolute terror. The kind of fear that only came when a child believed that monsters were real and coming to get them. "Get me Admiral Holden," Marcus said. "Now." Within an hour, the Admiral had arrived by emergency transport. She listened to the signal 3 times, her face growing harder with each repetition. "Can we identify who this child is?" she asked. "We are running DNA analysis against the Colonial Registry," Anna said. "It will take time, but we should be able to find a match. What about her location? Can we pinpoint it?" Marcus pulled up a star chart. A single red dot pulsed in a region of space marked with warning symbols in a dozen languages. "That is Harvester territory," he said quietly. "The Council declared it forbidden 300 years ago. No species has entered that region and returned. Then no species has tried hard enough." Admiral Holden turned to face her staff. "Contact every human military installation in the galaxy. I want a full mobilization within 12 hours. "Admiral," Marcus stepped forward carefully. "The Harvesters have destroyed every fleet ever sent against them. They have technology we cannot match. We would be sending our people to die." "Yes," Holden said simply. "We would." "And if that child were your daughter, Commander, would you care about the odds?" Marcus thought of his girls, safe at home, sleeping in their beds. He thought about what he would do if one of them was taken. If one of them was alone in the darkness, crying for help that would never come. "No," he said, "I would not." Then start the mobilization. The next 12 hours were chaos. Ships were pulled from every corner of human space. Patrol vessels abandoned their routes. Training exercises were canceled. Even the defense platforms around Earth itself were stripped of their crews and sent to join the growing fleet. The galaxy watched in disbelief. The Meridian Collective, a species of telepaths who served as the Council's primary observers, sent a message directly to Admiral Holden. "We understand that you have lost a child," the message read. "This is tragic, but you must understand that intervention in Harvester territory is impossible. They have crushed every enemy they have ever faced. Your fleet will be destroyed, your people will die, and the child will remain lost. Accept this truth and save yourselves." Admiral Holden's response was 4 words long. "We are coming anyway." Far across the galaxy, in a cage of cold metal, Emma Brennan had stopped screaming. Her throat was raw, and her body ached from crying. Around her, other children huddled in the darkness. Some were human. Others were Velith, with their long limbs and softly glowing skin. A few belonged to species Emma did not recognize. They were all afraid. The Harvesters moved outside their cages. They were massive insects with black shells and red eyes that seemed to see everything at once. They spoke in clicks and hisses that no translator could understand. And they looked at the children the way a farmer might look at livestock. Young Velith girl pressed against the bars next to Emma. Her name was Tola, and she had been taken from a different colony months ago. Her glow had faded to almost nothing. "No one will come," Tola whispered. "They never do. The Harvesters have taken children for thousands of years. No one has ever tried to save us." Emma wiped her eyes with dirty hands. "My mama will come. My mama always finds me when I am lost. Your mama cannot reach this place. No one can." But even as Tola spoke, something changed. The Harvesters became agitated. They clicked and hissed at each other, with increasing urgency. Their red eyes turned toward the ceiling, toward the stars beyond. "Something is wrong," Tola said softly. "They are scared." Emma looked up. Through a small gap in the metal above her, she could see a tiny piece of space. Stars sparkled against the endless black, and then, one by one, new lights appeared. Small at first, then growing larger, brighter. Thousands of them, emerging from nothing like fireflies, waking at dusk. Emma did not know what they were. She did not understand hyperspace travel, or fleet mobilization, or the logistics of interstellar war. She only knew that the lights were coming toward her, and that the monsters who had taken her were afraid. She pressed her face against the bars and watched the lights multiply. And for the first time, since her father had fallen, and her mother had screamed her name, Emma Brennan smiled. "Someone is coming," she whispered. "Someone heard me." The human fleet had arrived. 112,000 warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Ish, Harvester territory. They formed a wall of metal and fire that stretched across millions of miles of empty space. At their head was the flagship Unity, carrying Admiral Vera Holden and the weight of humanity's promise. A promise that no human child would ever be left behind. The Harvesters saw the fleet and sent their own ships to meet it. They had defeated every enemy for 300,000 years. They had no reason to believe this would be different. They were wrong. The Harvester defense fleet numbered 1.7 million vessels. They had built their empire over 300,000 years of conquest, and their ships were massive constructs of black metal and organic tissue. Each one was a weapon of terrible power, designed to crush opposition and harvest the remains. They had never faced an enemy like humanity. Lieutenant David Cole sat in the cockpit of his fighter craft, watching the impossible wall of Harvester ships grow larger in his display. He was 26 years old, born on Mars to a family of engineers. He had joined the military because he wanted to see the stars. He had never expected to see this many of them burning. "All wings, this is command." Admiral Holden's voice was steady in his earpiece. "Our objective is the Harvester home world at the center of this system. The children are being held there. We are going to punch through their fleet, land-ground forces, and bring those kids home. Any questions?" David almost laughed. Questions? He had 1,000 questions. How were they supposed to fight an enemy with a 15-to-1 advantage? How many of them would survive the next hour? Did any of this even matter? But then he looked at the photograph pinned to his console. Emma Brennan, 6 years old, holding a flower and smiling. Her image had been distributed to every ship in the fleet. Every soldier knew who they were fighting for. "No questions, Command," David said into his mic. "Just give us the word." The word is given. All ships engage. The battle began. Human tactical doctrine had been developed over thousands of years of warfare on Earth. Humans had fought each other with sticks and stones, with swords and arrows, with guns and bombs and weapons that could crack the planet itself. War was not something they did occasionally. It was woven into their history, their stories, their very nature. The Harvesters had faced many enemies, but none of them had been forged in the fire of constant conflict the way humans had been. David dove his fighter into the first wave of Harvester interceptors. They were faster than he was, stronger than he was, armed with weapons that could vaporize his ship in a single shot. It did not matter. He had trained for 10,000 hours in combat simulators. He had studied every recorded engagement in human history. He knew exactly where to be and when to be there. His first kill came 7 seconds into the battle. His second came 4 seconds after that. Across the fleet, the same story played out again and again. Human commanders made decisions in fractions of a second that Harvester tacticians needed minutes to consider. Human pilots flew with a reckless precision that the enemy could not match. Human soldiers fought with a fury that seemed to border on madness. But it was not madness. It was something else entirely. Captain Nina Vasquez commanded the destroyer Relentless. Her ship was 300 meters long, crewed by 240 soldiers, and armed with weapons that the Galactic Council had banned 50,000 years ago. She watched her tactical display as the battle unfolded, and she saw the gap she needed. Navigation. Bring us to heading 7-7-Mark-3. Engine room. Give me everything you have, Captain. Her first officer looked at her with wide eyes. That heading takes us directly into the center of their formation. We will be surrounded. Yes, and while they are surrounding us, they will not be blocking the transports. Nina smiled grimly. Sometimes you need to be the hammer. Sometimes you need to be the nail. The Relentless accelerated toward the enemy. Harvester ships turned to intercept, drawn by the foolish human vessel that seemed determined to die. They did not notice the troop transports slipping through the gap left in their formation. Nina's ship took hit after hit. Sections of the hull were torn away. Fires burned in a dozen compartments. The crew fought to keep the engines running, to keep the weapons firing, to keep moving forward. Captain, we have lost main power. Hull integrity at 30%. Nina gripped her command chair. Keep firing. Another impact. Another section gone. The bridge began to shake. Hull integrity at 15%. We are breaking apart. Keep firing. The Relentless died in a bloom of white fire, but not before it had cleared a path 500,000 miles wide. 47 troop transports flew through that gap, carrying 10,000 soldiers toward the Harvester home world. Nina Vasquez and her crew had given everything. They had done it without hesitation, because that was what humans did. Far from the main battle, the Meridian observer Voss watched through psychic projection. He was an ancient being, older than most civilizations in the galaxy. He had seen 1,000 wars and 1,000 species rise and fall. He thought he understood violence and sacrifice and courage. He did not understand what he was seeing now. The humans were dying. Their ships were being destroyed by the hundreds, by the thousands. The mathematical analysis was clear. They could not win this battle. The losses were too great, the enemy too numerous. Logic demanded retreat, but they did not retreat. They pushed forward. Every destroyed ship was replaced by 2 more that threw themselves at the enemy with equal fury. Pilots whose weapons were depleted rammed their craft into Harvester carriers. Wounded soldiers refused medical treatment until the mission was complete. Voss reached out with his mind, trying to understand the thoughts of the human soldiers. What he found shook him to his core. They were not thinking about victory or defeat. They were not calculating odds or measuring losses. Every single one of them was thinking about the same thing: the children. The children waiting to be rescued. The children who needed them. Voss had studied human psychology. He knew that they were a social species, that they formed strong bonds with their offspring. But this was something beyond simple biology. This was a species that would burn itself to ash rather than abandon its young. He transmitted a message to the Meridian Collective. The humans cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be deterred. They will fight until they rescue those children, or until every last one of them is dead. There is no middle ground. The collective's response came quickly. That is irrational behavior. It serves no evolutionary purpose to sacrifice the many for the few. Voss watched a human destroyer, already crippled and burning, accelerate into a Harvester command ship and detonate its reactor. The explosion destroyed both vessels and opened another gap in the enemy formation. You are wrong, Voss replied. It serves a purpose we do not have words for. It is something new, something we have never seen before. He paused, searching for the right term. I believe the humans call it love. On the Harvester home world, Emma Brennan heard the explosions above her. She did not know that 47,000 human soldiers had already died. She did not know that the greatest battle in galactic history was being fought for her sake. She only knew that the monsters were scared now. Their clicks and hisses had become frantic. They were running back and forth, preparing weapons. Sealing doors and through the walls, growing louder every minute. She could hear human voices, shouting, ordering, fighting, coming. For her Emma grabbed Tola's hand and pulled her close. I told you, she whispered. I told you someone would come. Tola looked at the ceiling, her fading bioluminescence flickering with hope. How did they know? How did they find us? Emma thought about the scream that had torn from her throat when the monsters first took her. She thought about the feeling that had come with it, the desperate need to be heard, to be found, to be saved. I called them, she said simply, and they answered. Above them, the human soldiers fought their way deeper into the Harvester stronghold. They had come across the galaxy. They had sacrificed everything, and they were not going to stop until every child was safe. Sergeant First Class James Torres had fought in 3 wars before this one. He had seen friends die on worlds whose names he could not pronounce. He had killed enemies who were only doing what their governments told them to do. He thought he understood what war meant. He was wrong. The Harvester homeworld was not a planet. It was a structure, a massive construct built from the ships and stations of every civilization the Harvesters had ever conquered. It stretched for thousands of miles in every direction, a maze of corridors and chambers filled with horrors that had no name in any human language. Led a squad of 12 soldiers through those corridors. Their objective was simple: find the children and get them out. The execution was anything but simple. The Harvesters fought with the desperation of creatures defending their home. They came in waves, their black shells glistening under the harsh emergency lights. Their claws could tear through body armor like paper. Their weapons fired streams of burning acid that dissolved flesh and metal alike. James lost 4 soldiers in the first hour. He did not have time to mourn them. He pushed forward, following the signal that command had given him. Somewhere in this nightmare, a little girl was still screaming. Torres, this is Omega Team. The voice crackled in his earpiece. We have located a holding facility in Sector 7. Multiple life signs. Mostly children. Copy that, Omega. We are moving to support. They ran through corridors that smelled of death and old blood. They passed cells filled with things that had once been alive, but were now merely raw material for Harvester biology. James did not let himself think about what would have happened to the children if they had arrived too late. The holding facility was guarded by 12 Harvesters. They were larger than the ones James had faced before, their shells reinforced with metal plating, their eyes burning with ancient hatred. They saw the human soldiers approaching and raised their weapons. James did not hesitate. He raised his rifle and fired. The battle lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds. When it was over, 3 more of James's soldiers were dead. But the Harvesters were gone, and the door to the holding facility was open. Inside, the children huddled against the far wall, human, Velith, others that James did not recognize. All of them were thin and pale, their eyes wide with a fear that might never fully heal. And at the front of the group, her red hair dirty and tangled, her small hands balled into fists, stood Emma Brennan. James knelt in front of her. His armor was scarred and burned. His face was covered in blood that was mostly not his own. He must have looked like a monster himself. But Emma looked at him and did not flinch. Are you here to save us? She asked. Yes. James's voice was rough. My name is Sergeant Torres. We came from Earth. we heard you calling." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I screamed and screamed. I did not know if anyone could hear me. We heard you." James reached out and gently took her hand. "The whole galaxy heard you. And we came." He stood and turned to his remaining soldiers. "Get these children to the extraction point. Move fast. The harvesters will not let us leave without a fight." They ran. The corridors that had been empty before were now filled with enemies. The harvesters had realized what was happening, and they were throwing everything they had at the human soldiers. James and his team fought through them, protecting the children with their bodies, firing until their weapons overheated and then using them as clubs. Private First Class Maria Gomez took a hit meant for a young Velith boy. She fell and did not get up. Corporal Thomas Reed held a corridor alone for 90 seconds while the others escaped, and when they finally pulled him to safety, he had 17 wounds and was still trying to reload his rifle. James carried Emma on his back. She was light, far too light for a girl her age. She had not eaten properly in weeks, but she did not complain. She wrapped her arms around his neck and held on with a strength that surprised him. "Are you scared?" he asked her as they ran. "Yes," she admitted, "but I was more scared before. When I was alone, you are not alone anymore." They reached the extraction point just as the transport ships were landing. Human medics rushed forward to take the children, to check them for injuries, to wrap them in blankets and tell them that everything was going to be okay. James handed Emma to a medic and stepped back. His job was done. The child was safe, but as the medic started to carry her away, Emma reached out and grabbed James's hand. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for coming." James looked at her dirty face, her matted hair, her eyes that had seen things no child should ever see. He thought about the soldiers who had died to reach this moment. He thought about the 47,000 lives that had been spent to save these children. "You are welcome," he said softly. "Now go. Your mother is waiting for you." Emma smiled. It was the first real smile she had allowed herself since the night her world had ended. Then she let the medic carry her away toward the ship that would take her home. James watched her go. Then he picked up his rifle and turned back toward the corridors. There were more children out there, more cells to breach, more monsters to fight. And humans did not stop until the job was done. In orbit above the Harvester home world, the battle continued. The human fleet had taken devastating losses. 47,000 ships had been destroyed. 3 million soldiers had died. The cost was beyond anything in human history, but they were winning. The Harvesters had never faced an enemy that would not break. They had never fought a species that considered retreat to be worse than death. Their tactics, developed over 300,000 years of easy conquest, failed against opponents who simply refused to stop. Admiral Holden stood on the bridge of the Unity, watching the tactical display. Her fleet was battered. Her crews were exhausted. Her ammunition was running low, but the enemy was breaking. Their coordination was failing. Their ships were retreating toward the home world in desperate disorder. "Admiral," her communications officer looked up from his station. "We are receiving a transmission from the surface. All children have been recovered. Repeat, all children recovered. They are en route to the fleet now." Vera closed her eyes. For a moment, she was not an admiral, or a commander, or a leader. She was just a tired old woman who had gambled everything on a mission that should have been impossible, and she had won. "Signal all ships," she said quietly. "Begin withdrawal. Cover the transports. No one else dies today." The human fleet pulled back, their weapons still firing, their shields still absorbing punishment. The Harvesters did not pursue. They had learned their lesson. They had finally found an enemy they could not defeat, not because the humans were stronger, Not because their technology was better. Not because they had superior numbers or tactics. Because they would not give up. Because they would pay any price. Because when a child cried out in the darkness, they would cross the galaxy to answer. The harvesters watched the human fleet retreat, and for the first time in their long and bloody history, they felt something they had never felt before. Fear of the small, fragile creatures who loved their children more than they loved their own lives. Fear of what those creatures might do if they were ever threatened again. Fear of humanity. The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as Admiral Vera Holden finished her testimony. 12,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in stunned stillness. The footage behind her showed the final images. Human ships returning home. Children being reunited with their families. Emma Brennan running into her mother's arms. High Arbiter Thrax rose slowly from his throne. His obsidian form seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than it had been at the start of the trial. "Admiral Holden," he said, his voice measured and careful. "You have presented your case. You have explained your actions. But the facts remain. You violated 47 treaties. You used weapons that have been forbidden since before your species existed. You destroyed a civilization." "I did." Vera's voice was calm. "The penalty for such actions is severe. Your species is young. You have been part of the galactic community for less than a century. We could isolate Earth. We could destroy your colonies. We could declare war and erase humanity from existence." Vera met his gaze without flinching. "You could try." The chamber stirred. Whispers and clicks and telepathic murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. No species had ever spoken to the High Arbiter with such casual defiance. "You believe you could survive such a conflict?" Thrax asked. "I believe that if you threaten our children, we will fight you the same way we fought the harvesters. We will throw everything we have against you. We will sacrifice every ship, every soldier, every world if we must." Vera stepped forward. "We will make you pay a price so terrible that the galaxy will remember it for 1,000,000 years." She paused, letting her words settle over the chamber like a weight. "But I do not think it will come to that, because I think you have learned something today. Something that no species in this chamber truly understood until now." "And what is that?" Thrax asked. "What we are willing to do for our children." Vera turned to face the assembled representatives. Her voice rose, carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "You have watched the footage. You have seen the numbers. 47,000 ships destroyed. 3 million soldiers dead. An entire civilization broken. All for 11,000 children." She spread her arms. "And we would do it again. Without hesitation. Without regret." She pointed at the image of Emma Brennan, still displayed on the screen behind her. "That little girl cried out in fear, and we heard her. We heard her across 47,000 light-years of empty space. And we came. Not because we thought we could win. Not because we calculated the odds and found them favorable. We came because we could not do otherwise." Vera lowered her arm. Her voice grew quieter, but somehow more intense. "You call us young. You call us primitive. You look at our short lives and our violent history, and you think you understand what we are. But you do not. You have never faced a species like us. You have never met beings who love the way we love." She pointed at the Velith delegation. "When we rescued those children, we did not sort them by species. We did not leave the non-humans behind. We carried them all to safety, because a child is a child, no matter what world they come from." The Velith representative rose slowly. Her bioluminescent skin pulsed with soft blue light. "The humans speak the truth," she said. "My people lost children in the raid on New Harvest. The human soldiers died protecting Velith children with the same ferocity they showed for their own. They did not hesitate. They did not calculate. Her voice trembled. They simply loved. Another representative rose. Then another. Then another. Across the chamber, species who had watched the Battle of Harvester Prime in horrified fascination began to stand. The Meridians, the crystalline Jorvan, the gas cloud Nebulites. Even the isolationist Koreth, who had not spoken in council for 3,000 years. The observer Voss stepped forward. His telepathic voice echoed through the chamber. I watched the battle through psychic projection. I saw human soldiers die by the thousands, and in their final moments, not one of them regretted their choice. They died knowing that they had protected children who were not their own, from a world they had never seen. He turned to face Thrax. We have debated action against the Harvesters for 300,000 years. The humans ended the debate in 3 weeks. Perhaps it is time we listen to them. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives argued and debated and broadcast telepathic opinions in a dozen different spectrums. Thrax raised his arms for silence, and slowly the chaos subsided. The council must make a decision, he said. Admiral Holden, please step back while we deliberate. Vera nodded and moved to the edge of the platform. She stood alone, a single human among thousands of aliens, and waited for her fate to be decided. The deliberation lasted 6 hours. Vera did not move. She did not speak. She watched the council debate with patient eyes, knowing that whatever they decided, she had done the right thing. Finally, Thrax rose once more. The chamber fell silent. The council has reached a verdict. His voice echoed through the vast space. The charges against Admiral Vera Holden and the species of Earth are dismissed. A wave of relief washed through the human delegation. But Thrax was not finished. Furthermore, he continued, the council recognizes the actions taken by humanity as a service to all civilized species. The Harvesters preyed upon our children for 300,000 years. We did nothing. We were afraid. He paused. The humans were not. He turned to face Vera directly. In recognition of your species' courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to the protection of the innocent, the Galactic Council offers humanity a permanent seat among the High Representatives. You will be the first species in galactic history to receive such an honor within a century of first contact. The chamber erupted in applause. Clicking and humming and telepathic approval filled the air. Vera stood alone on the platform, accepting the honor with a simple nod, but she was not thinking about politics, or power, or humanity's new position in the galaxy. She was thinking about a little girl with red hair and a smile that had survived the darkness. 1 year later, Emma Brennan stood at the base of a monument. It rose from the ground like a spear of black stone, covered with names. 3 million names. 3 million soldiers who had died to bring her home. Her mother stood beside her, holding her hand. Admiral Holden stood nearby, her uniform decorated with medals that meant nothing to Emma. Emma carried a single flower, the same kind she had been holding in the photograph that every soldier in the fleet had carried with them. She placed it gently at the base of the monument. Thank you, she whispered. The words were small and simple, but they carried a weight that no speech could match. 3 million people had heard her cry. 3 million people had answered. Sergeant James Torres watched from the crowd. He had survived the battle, one of the lucky ones. His medal felt heavy on his chest. His memories felt heavier, but when he saw Emma smile up at her mother, he knew that every sacrifice had been worth it. Every friend he had lost. Every nightmare he would carry for the rest of his life, because that smile was proof that humanity had kept its promise across the galaxy. In the ruins of their shattered empire, the surviving Harvesters gathered in the darkness. They had ruled the stars for 300,000 years. They had taken whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted it. Now they were scattered and broken, hiding in the shadows of their former glory. Their leaders transmitted a warning to every survivor. In every corner of the galaxy, avoid the humans. Do not approach their worlds. Do not touch their ships. There was a pause before the final command. And never, ever harm their children. If you do, they will come for you. No matter where you hide, no matter how far you run, they will find you. The message ended with a single image, a photograph of a little girl with red hair, holding a flower and smiling. Remember this face. Remember what they did for her. Remember what they will do for any of them. The transmission cut off, leaving only silence. And somewhere in the vast and ancient darkness of space, the galaxy began to understand what it meant to be human. Not the violence, not the war, not the terrible weapons or the endless conflicts, but the love, the fierce, unstoppable, universe-shaking love that a human feels for a child, the love that could summon a fleet across the stars, the love that could burn empires to ash dot, the love that would never, ever give up. That was the true cry, the cry that had echoed across 47,000 light years. Not just terror, not just fear, a cry for help, and humanity had answered.